Friday. Wow, last Friday of February. Geez, hard to believe it's already March. So I'm John Murphy, the host of Fearless, and this is our eighth episode. So I'll do a quick review of the first seven. But before that, I want to just remind you that I'm one of the Fuel instructors. I have three courses with Fuel. Beyond Doubt, Four Steps to Inner Peace, which we'll be touching on a little bit today. Creative Problem Solving, which we'll also be touching on just a little bit today, some of the tools, and leading with wisdom. So I invite you to go to Fuel and check that out. And also, if you go to my instructor page, you can meet my new AI bot, my chat bot. And so you can actually have unlimited conversations with me with follow-up questions, things like that. If there's something I say in these episodes, or there's a question you want to ask me and you can't get to me directly, you can go to my bot, which is quite fascinating. I've had a conversation with my bot now a couple of times, and you get some pretty good answers. Let me just put it that way. And the way that works is it's been loaded with all of my work for over almost 40 years, books I've written, speeches I've given, interviews I've done. That all goes into the bot, and so it's quite knowledgeable. Let me just put it that way. Uh, Also, these sessions are recorded, and you can get them almost immediately on YouTube. So if there's a session in particular you missed, go back and see it. If there's a session that you particularly like, please share it. Share it with your family, your friends, your coworkers, your boss, anyone like that. So quick overview. Fearless is all about fearing less and overcoming this tremendous barrier, if you will, this obstacle to true success. So true success. I'm talking about bliss. I'm talking about joy in your life, inner peace, just unconditional love, where every day you wake up eager, enthusiastic, excited, no stress, no worries, no doubts. This is possible. But to get there, you need to understand how. All right? It's not just wishful thinking. There is a how. And so we talk about that in Fearless. So if we go back just for a quick review, I said this is our eighth session. We launched in January, on January 9th, and we have themes each month. And in January, our theme was assumptions, challenging our assumptions, those limiting beliefs that we don't even know we have, those yeah buts, those excuses, those doubts. And in sessions, I've had you paint a picture 5 years out of what you look like, what you feel like, what you're doing, where you are, the relationships you're in, the profession you're in. And when you do that 5 years out, and you really stretch, all of a sudden you start to realize that, well, I don't know if I can really do that. I mean, if you really stretch, you're uncovering those hidden, latent, limiting beliefs, the doubt. So when you go beyond doubt and you learn how to do that, and it's a letting go process. It's not an adding process. It's more of a deletion process. Letting go of these viruses of the mind, these doubts, a whole new world will opens up. And in my course, Beyond Doubt, Four Steps to Inner Peace, those four steps, which are iterative and circular. So the more you do those, the better you get. It's like practicing anything. And the four steps are let be, let go, let see, and let flow. Here's what that means. When we are present and we be, and we take inventory and we examine how we feel, which is what we're going to do today. How do we feel? And you really take an honest look at that, and you identify things that are causing you grief, causing you anger, causing you despair, causing you anxiety or fear or stress. You identify those things, you let them go. And there are tools to do that, which I walk through in my course Beyond Doubt. Tools to let go, release, delete phobias, delete limiting beliefs. And when you do that, you see the world incredibly different. It's like seeing blue sky beyond the clouds. We all get trapped in the clouds. We get entangled in negative relationships and negative thinking, ego thinking, if you will. And when we clear out those clouds, it's blue sky. And guess what? There's always blue sky. There's always blue sky beyond the clouds. Okay. So we get there. And when we actually begin to see the world that way, this is a shift in frequencies. When we see the world that way, the world reflects that back to us. We're like magnets. And when we vibrate, we put out a certain frequency of energy. Like energy attracts like energy. It comes back to us. We're always given evidence from the universe, so to speak, that we're right. That we're right. So if we go through life bitter and negative and critical, and there's all these things wrong with the world will show us we're right. And this another person can look at the same world and say, I think it's beautiful. I think everything's in perfect harmony and balance. Without up, we couldn't know down. Without night, we couldn't know day. Okay, of course there's problems, but on the other side of the problem is a solution. Two sides to the same coin. What side do you focus on? Because whatever side you focus on is what you attract more of. So in our very first session, which I led, uh, basically we talked about challenging assumptions, getting down to that level. All right, that was on January 9th. On January 16th, I did a vision exercise with you where you said, okay, what do I look like physically? What do I feel like physically 5 years from now? Draw a picture. Aristotle said the soul never thinks without a picture. All right. Einstein said imagination is everything. It's a preview of what's to come. So in your imagination, in your vision, what do you look like 5 years from now? What do you feel like physically? What do you feel like emotionally? How do you feel when you get out of bed in the morning? Think about that, right? How do you feel mentally? How sharp are you? How focused are you? What kinds of mental uh, uh, acuity do you have? All right. Professionally, what are you doing professionally 5 years from now? Same job? Maybe something different. Maybe something even more exciting. All right. What's going on socially? What kind of relationships are you in? Okay. These are critical questions. What's going on financially? How are you doing financially 5 years from now? And how are you doing spiritually? How awake do you feel? How enlightened do you feel? How loving and kind and compassionate and reverent do you feel about life? Deep, deep, deep respect for life. How do you feel? When you draw this picture and then you identify anything that's in the way, it's like a closed valve. It's like a faucet that's shut off tight. There's water that wants to flow, you're not letting it. Okay, so when we let be and we examine this, and then we let go, we open the valve, we get flow, what athletes sometimes call the zone. We just get into this state of peak performance, timelessness. Life just becomes incredible. So we talked about that in the first couple of sessions. Then I talked about minding the mind. And the thing about that, real quickly, is there's the conscious mind, which can process about 40 bits of data per second, and the subconscious mind, which can process 40 million bits of data per second. It's no comparison, a 1,000,000 to 1 ratio. So the conscious mind is the will, so to speak. I will make this change. I will break this habit. I will go on a diet. I will lose 10 pounds. That's the conscious mind. If the subconscious mind saying, no, you won't, you're not worthy of it. You've lived your whole life with doubt. You keep trying these things and it doesn't work. Basically, you're getting in your own way. If the subconscious, and because it's subconscious, you don't even know it's thinking that. It just shows up in your tendencies. And I mentioned that most of the programming in the subconscious mind happens by the age of 6 years old. So it's been running your life for a long time. By the way, the subconscious mind, which can process far more data than the conscious mind, is always present. It cannot think ahead and it cannot think back. It's always present, but it's running on the past. Everything in the subconscious mind comes from the past. So you're loading it. So if you don't use the conscious mind to reprogram the subconscious mind, you're just going to live in the past. You'll just keep repeating it throughout life. It shows up as habits and tendencies. You just keep having this tendency to get afraid or anxious or nervous when you have to do something. You live in fear. All right, so that's the key to that particular session. Again, if you missed any of these sessions, go back and check them out. On the last show of January, I had Allie Sweeney, one of our fuel instructors, join us about release, about letting go. And Allie shared some stories. If you missed that episode, go back and check it out. Okay, deep. And in the title of that session with Allie was let go to allow flow, essentially what I was just talking about. On February 6th, I introduced the map of consciousness, a very powerful tool that I will come back to today and share with you for today's theme. On Friday the 13th, I was born on Friday the 13th. So with a name like Murphy and Murphy's Law, you can imagine some superstitions, right? Jim Cathcart joined me, the legendary Jim Cathcart, world-renowned speaker, Hall of Fame speaker, and author. Jim came on board to reveal some stories about it was facing fear with fortitude, facing fear with fortitude. And Jim shared just some stories about how's he handled it. Here's a guy that's given thousands of speeches in 100 countries. How does he get up on stage, which scares a lot of people, and just do it so effortlessly? Talk about flow. And the following week, I had Brian Biro, America's breakthrough speaker, come on board. And we talked about from ego to we go, which I'll come back to and speak a little bit more about today. And Brian, if you haven't seen that episode, it's getting a lot of attention. So please go and take a look at that. So what about today? Today, we're going to talk about, are we controlling our mind, or is our mind controlling us? A lot of people are confused by that. They don't really even think about it. I'll often say when someone says, I changed my mind, who's the I actually saying that? Isn't the mind? Aren't I the mind? So we spend a lot of time trying to figure out how do we use the mind. Answers, we actually don't in most cases. The mind's using us. We've got that completely backwards. What is the mind? In a nutshell, it's the ego. It's the ego mind. It's the mind that wants you to think you're your job title, you're a body that looks a certain way, you do certain things. And the thing about the ego mindset, I call it the ego thought system, is when we're attached to that, we think that's what we are, we live in fear. It's the root cause to fear, is the ego thought system, which in most cases people think they are. So of course they're living in fear. And we attach to things, a job, a house, a spouse, our children. We attach to all kinds of things, and we live in perpetual fear of losing them. What happens if something, I lose my job? What happens if I lose my income, my house, one of my children? What happens if I lose these things? So one of the key principles here in letting go is referred to as detachment or even unattachment. This does not mean you don't love your job, your child, your spouse, your home, your car, whatever. It means that you're not attaching your peace of mind, your happiness, your joy to anything you cannot control. Anything you can't control. This takes us to the only thing you can control, your mind. The problem is the mind is controlling you in many cases, which triggers these fears and doubts. I like to use the metaphor of a king or a queen over a kingdom or a queendom. Our true self, I'll call it the capital S self, our true spiritual energy self is king or queen. And the kingdom is the mind, the ego mind. So we have the power to rule the mind and to know better than letting the mind rule us. So I wanted to ask you to do a little exercise. And the exercise is, before I actually get into the details of it, there's a tool belt I use. And I teach it in my creative problem solving class on Fuel. And the tool belt, and I've used it for 30 years all over the world with businesses, as well as in coaching with executives and individuals. And the tool belt's called DMAIC, D-M-A-I-C. So this is a takeaway I want you to make note of. DMAIC. So what does that mean? What does that stand for? And D is define, M is measure, A is analyze, I is improve or innovate, and C is control. Incidentally, this is not a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 step and I'm done thing. Just like the ring of peace and beyond doubt, It's iterative. So what does that mean? After I go through a cycle of DMAIC, I start over again. So define what? Define current state. Define yourself the way you see it. Define where you are, define details, be factual. Then measure the same thing. Measure facts and details in your life. Measure how you spend your time. Measure how often you get nervous or anxious or angry or afraid. Then analyze why you get that way. This is the key, is analyzing root cause to get to, if I'm getting frustrated a lot, if I'm getting really stressed, and I wake up and I'm anxious and I'm worried about this or that, there's a root cause to that. So in the analyze phase, we get to root cause. And it's at that level we want to solve the problem. Not put band-aids on the symptoms, but get to the root cause and solve it at that level. And so when we go into the improve, perhaps even innovate phase, we identify solutions. And a lot of times the solutions are not where we add more, we actually subtract. Okay, it's a whole different way of looking at it. And the C in DMAIC is control. How do we hold the gain? How do we continue to repeat and improve? So, if you think about a great athlete, for example, the control is repetition, practice over and over. No matter how good they are, they continue to practice and get better and better. So I'm going to give you a little exercise now just to think about, and it starts with define. Okay, I want you to stop and think about, and in fact, you want to put anything in the chat, I'll take a look at that and address it. But I want you to define, when was the last time that you felt ashamed or guilty? Shame or guilt? When's the last time? Think about that for a minute. When's the last time you felt any degree of shame or guilt? Well, you know what? I should have been there. I should have said something different, or I shouldn't have said what I said. And now I live with some degree of regret or shame. Think about the last time that happened for you. Has it happened in the last 24 hours? Does it happen frequently? That's define and measure. How often does it happen where you feel like, man, I really messed up. Shouldn't have done that, shouldn't have said that. All right, let's move on to apathy, some degree of hopelessness or despair. When's the last time you just felt like, man, I don't know what to do. I don't know, geez. I don't know what to do. Okay, that's apathy. Okay, what about grief? When's the last time you felt any degree of grief or grievances, criticisms, complaints, conflict? It's the last time you felt conflicted. You felt any degree of grief. So isn't that last 24 hours? How often does it happen where you feel grief? Just, or some degree of loss. All right, after grief, we have fear, doubt, anxiety. When's the last time you felt nervous about something, anxious about something? Maybe it was a meeting you had to go into, an exam you had to take, an interview of some sort, a performance review. When's the last time you had any sense of anxiety or stress? When's the last time you were stressed about something? Think about it. Make a note. How about this one? When's the last time you felt like you lacked something? You needed something more. Some degree, the idea around scarcity. I don't have enough. I don't know how I'm going to pay my bills this month. I need more money. I need more time. I need more space. Anytime you say, I need more, when's the last time that happened? You thought that way. These are thoughts. Thoughts are energy, and energy attracts like energy. This is why this is so important. How about anger, jealousy, attack thoughts, defensive thoughts, like defending yourself? I got to stand up for myself. Somebody said something, and that's just simply wrong. I have to defend myself. Think about that for a minute. When's the last time you felt any degree of anger or defensiveness? And now let's move on to pride. When's the last time you felt proud? You felt, like, yeah, I gotta, I gotta show everybody how great I am. Incidentally, this stuff can translate into, habits like checking out your social media every day to see how many likes you got. This stuff can translate into taking pictures of what you ate at some restaurant to show off. Anything that involves showing off, that falls into pride. Hey, look at me. You know, what that really is, it's weakness. It's a low self-esteem. A lot of times the ego shows up as all that big and bold and arrogant, when in fact it's a calling for attention. It's a calling for appreciation. So when's the last time you felt like you needed external approval? You need somebody else to approve how valuable you are. Think about that for a moment. Okay, seeing a few chats here. It's a new way of talking to yourself. A lot more when I become a parent. I guess ego and validation are the same. Yeah, so ego is always looking for validation. Ego never thinks it has enough. You never have enough money to really be happy. No matter how much you have, you got to have more. You never have a big enough, fancy enough, this or that. You got to get that more expensive watch to, or ego also shows up as jealousy. So if you actually see someone else who's doing really well and you have any distaste whatsoever, you're blocking your own success. You're blocking your own success with that mindset. But that's how the ego thinks. The ego cannot be satisfied. The ego cannot understand true love because it's conditional. I fall in and out of love. The ego can't understand true forgiveness. So I forgive you, but I'll never forget. Or I'll forgive you, but I was right and you were wrong. That is not forgiveness. That's called condemnation. And when we condemn anything, we condemn ourselves. So everything we're putting out there is a reflection of what we're going on inside us. If we see a world of conflict, it's telling us we're conflicted. If we see a world of chaos, it tells us we're living in chaos internally. That's not a healthy state to be in. So now I want you to think about why this is important. So we've defined it, we've measured, we've examined our life very quickly and very briefly on some different categories. Why does this matter? And it's put simply, it's that like energy, like frequencies attract like frequencies. You've heard the saying, perhaps misery loves company. So does joy. If we live a joyful life, we wake up, we spring out of bed, we're eager, we're excited, can't wait to get to work, can't wait to do whatever it is we do. We have a completely different experience for the day than somebody who's just like, oh my God, I don't feel well. I can't, I dread going to work. Totally different experience. So with the ring of peace, we let be, we do an examination, we define and measure, we identify things through analysis that we need to let go of. And the better we get at this, okay, the more successful we are, the happier we are, the more joyful we are. So when we have that 5-year vision, we're out there in 5 years, we're as fit as we've ever been. We've got tons of energy. We feel great physically and emotionally, and intellectually. We're sharp as a tack, focus, memory, everything's just wow. Okay. Socially, we're in the greatest relationships. By the way, we may have left some relationships because the energies of those old negative, critical, draining, vampires are gone. That energy just doesn't work anymore. We're at a whole different frequency. So now we're hanging out with super positive, super cool people, and it just feeds on itself. Financially, we got money chasing us. We're no longer chasing the paycheck. The paychecks is chasing us. All right. Spiritually, we have reverence. We live in love unconditionally. We're at a deep state of inner peace. And I'm going to share my screen now very quickly, just so we can talk through this a little bit more, using a visual. All right. And the visual, and I've shared this before, is called the map of consciousness. And this is the work of Dr. David Hawkins, an MD, a PhD, a brilliant, brilliant man, since passed now some time ago, but lectured all over the world, Oxford, Harvard. And David Hawkins developed something using scientific methods called the map of consciousness, where he calibrated the energy frequencies of 17 different feelings, if you will. Some call it emotions, but I prefer to use the word feelings because the only real true emotion is love, and the absence of love is fear. So you can see above the yellow line here, the love frequencies, the love emotions, and below that, you can see the fear frequencies. So when we just did that assessment and I asked you, when's the last time you felt shame? Notice that's the very lowest frequency here. Misery loves company. So if you've got shame in your life and you feel ashamed, it's the ego telling you you should feel that way. And if you're not aware that you're king of the kingdom, queen of the queendom, and you can say, ego, I hear you, but go back to your corner. I'm going to make a different decision now with my mind. I'm not going to feel that way. Our thoughts trigger our feelings. If you think for a moment about anything you're ashamed of, you feel shame and attract more. If you think about something that you feel very grateful for, you feel like really happy and joyful about, your frequency drives up to the top of this. But you got to be careful because we're human. And when we confuse who's really in control, the capital S self, our spiritual self, or the ego self, the small s, which is also the body, when we confuse those two, we think because the body feels a certain way and the ego mind is telling us to feel a certain way, that we have no choice. We have to feel that way. I can't change that. The minute we say, I can't change that, we've given up true power, authentic power, true control over the only thing we have any real control over. So the bridge of courage, what I call that yellow line there, is where we say to ourselves, I'm done with this ego nonsense. Often this comes to us when we've gone through a deep period of pain, suffering, something really transformational, where we just say, enough. And we shift from my will be done to thy will be done. We let go, we delete this ego way of thinking. And when we do that, we experience something very different. So I want to just share with you something that I developed before we go here on what I'm going to call the 7 P's to help us practice this. That's one of the P's, actually. So as I'm thinking about how do I let go and really free up? How do I open the valve, okay, to let that energy flow through me, okay, and reach that peak level of performance and timelessness and flow? What could I do? Well, the first P, and you might want to take notes here. The first P is presence. So in the let be present. That conscious mind is constantly wandering to the past, which you can't change, and to the future, which you can't change yet. But it's back and forth, back and forth. Meanwhile, you're running on the subconscious mind. So by becoming present of the mind, be present of the mind, mind your mind, as I like to put it, you start to really examine. This is like using DMAIC. You start to examine your shifting feelings. Why are they shifting? Because you're shifting thoughts. Your thoughts affect your feelings. So the second P then is processing. So we look at the way we're feeling and we process it. And I like the idea of this Zen teaching. Okay, we let it in the front door and we let it out the back door, but we don't invite it for tea. So let's just take fear, for example. You're feeling anxious about something, nervous. resistant, hesitant. I don't know. This is a bit frightening. Rather than lock the front door and try to push it away and fight it, which the ego wants you to do, you don't fight it. You don't resist it because when you do, you just make it stronger. What do? You invite it in, you have a conversation with it, and you recognize it's coming from the ego. So I'll do this all the time. Hey, ego, I know that's you. Why, why should I be afraid? Why should I be afraid? And the answer to that is typically that because I'm projecting in my mind something's going to go wrong. I'm projecting a possible failure, and that's what's scaring me. But it's assumption. We've talked about assumptions. I'm assuming something could go wrong, and that's triggering fear and anxiety. Why wouldn't I, if I'm going to assume anything, why wouldn't I assume something's going to go right? So the third P is projection. What am I projecting? Is it positive? There's another P. Or is it negative? So projecting, positivity. Those two go together. So presence, processing, contemplation, so to speak, and then examining what we're projecting. What am I visualizing? Okay, what does that look like? The next one's planning and previewing, if you will. How do I plan and then prepare? That's the next one for success. If you look at anybody in any business who's highly successful, they're not winging it. They plan ahead carefully, and then they prepare, they train, they get ready, they practice, right? And then we perform. Finally, you got to get up there and do it. So you perform, and then you play back. That's the last P. You play, but what do you mean you play back? You review what you did in the performance. In sports, these are game films. Okay, in the military, they're called after action reviews. After we've done something, let's get together, let's review it, let's see what worked, what didn't. We had a plan. Did we follow it? Did the plan work or not work? We're just constantly reviewing, and then we go right back through the cycle. And here's what you'll discover. And Jim Cathcart talked about this, Brian Biro. These guys are speaking more than practically anyone on the planet in front of huge audiences, which is terrifying to a lot of people. But when you practice and you prepare and you do the playback and you perform and you do the playback and you learn every time you make any kind of mistake, you learn from it. There's no such thing then as a mistake or a failure because you learn from it. And you have that faith over fear, then things just change immensely. I'll stop sharing my screen now. All right. And I'm just going to leave you with this. Fear is an illusion. It's a projection of the mind that something's going to go wrong. It's your mind trying to control you instead of you controlling it. So rather than fight it and resist it and pretend it isn't there, recognize it, have a conversation with it, and then choose differently. Fear, I hear you. I understand there's some risk involved. I'm going to process that and evaluate that risk. And in one of my courses, I teach FMEA, failure mode and effect analysis, a risk mitigation tool. I'm going to think about what could go wrong and what could go right, and the severity of that. And I'm going to have countermeasures. I'm going to come up with ways where I won't fail. Okay, I'll protect myself. So take a back seat. I'm going to do this. I'm going to take a risk. I realize there's uncertainty, but I'd rather go through uncertainty than live with regret the rest of my life by replaying the past. So I'll leave you with those closing thoughts. Now, on Monday, I will be hosting Mindset Matters on Fuel, Monday at 11 o'clock Eastern Time. We'll have more on this topic and a lot more on mindset. And then next Friday, I have John Giganti joining me, a fuel instructor, and we're going to take fear now. The theme for March is courage. I've got 4 excellent guests coming on each week, all from Fuel. I will share more on that as we get going. But John Giganti is next, and don't miss that episode. And I'd say this: go to Fuel, take my courses Beyond Doubt, Four Steps to Inner Peace, because it's going to give you a lot more detail on what we've discussed here. Take creative problem solving. You'll see tools like FMEA, tools like the tool belt, DMAIC, all laid out in that course. And Leading with Wisdom, a very popular course, short courses in that, on just leading with more awareness, higher consciousness. So take a look at those. Also have a conversation with my bot. This is pretty exciting stuff. If you have any questions for me, talk to my bot or message me on LinkedIn. Connect with me on LinkedIn and follow me there. And remember, these sessions are recorded. They'll show up soon on YouTube. Grab it and share it or review it. And if you missed anything from the prior sessions, go back and take a look at those and pass those along. With that, let's see. Check the chats here. There's some links there. There you go. Sign up for Mindset Monday. There's a link on that. There's also, this is the last session of the month for Fearless. So you need to register again for the next month. So you'll see that come out. And again, our theme is courage for excellent guests. And then I have some very special guests coming out in April, which I'll tell you more about later. Some outside of Fuel, some very, very big names, including this former chairman and CEO of one of the largest companies in America, actually in the world. So he's now a keynote speaker and an author. And then I've got one of the leading influencers, leading women influencers in the world on the subject of success, New York Times bestselling author. She's going to be on the show with me as well. So stay tuned and happy Friday. Have a great weekend. And hopefully I'll see you on Monday for Mindset Matters. I'm John Murphy, and I will see